Hello, and welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown. I am your host, Mike Hommel.
And I'm your other host, Solely Hommel.
And we're going to take you through 31 scary movies through the month of October, like we do every year. But for the first time this year, we're going to do it entirely in audio format. We like to mix it up every year. One thing you need to be aware of is that we will be employing a truly ghoulish number of spoilers throughout all of these reviews. So if you haven't seen the movie we're reviewing, maybe don't listen to our podcast until you do. We highly recommend you check them out and watch along with us. It's going to be fun for everybody. I mean, how could it not be? So if you're ready and you've watched the movie, please step inside our lair and let's begin.
A Dark Song is a 2016 movie that we watched on Netflix.
Yep.
It is not rated, and it has a 100-minute running time. Let's look at some stats here. Ratings. IMDb gives it a 6.1.
Metacritic gives it a 71, and Rotten Tomatoes
gives it a 91. And looking at the scores for the movies we've seen so far, there's one other 91 for Little Evil. That is not what I expected to see.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so I find that very interesting. The Rotten Tomato audience gives it a 59, which honestly doesn't surprise me.
Yes, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Although it's not any lower than IMDb, so whatever.
No, it's not. That that makes it higher than I would expect, or IMDb lower than I would expect, I guess is more accurate. But it definitely falls into that category of movies where the critics are going to think they understand things that they don't, and the audience is going to fail to understand things that they should.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So this one, you tagged it as Irish.
It is kind of Irish.
It was by the Irish Film Council.
Yeah.
It takes place...
Irish Film Board.
Oh, sure. It takes place in Wales.
And with the help of the Welsh Film Council.
Sure, it was,
It's a joint project.
Joint project, yep. Tell me why you picked this movie.
I knew this question was coming. So, I am well known for flipping through tens of thousands of movies on our services and going, that one sounds good.
And I am well known for breathing heavily and rolling my eyes a lot, waiting for you to pick something.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun evening for us.
Whee! Okay, and?
I have this problem where I will see a movie, think, that's interesting, I'll consider that one to watch, and then I go, but what if something else is better? Because there are thousands of movies that are all horror movies.
Yes.
And I can't take one because the next one might be better. Even though I know we're going to do 31 movies and any of them is just fine, there's always going to be a better one. So I flipped through about 700 or 800 movies last night.
Mm-hmm.
And this one caught my eye, as did many others. And when I'm really interested in one, I will pop open IMDb on my phone and see, kind of look at the rating and see what people are saying a little bit. And I accidentally read some of the reviews, which, not that they spoiled anything, but they were like, ooh, interesting, this and that, and talking about elements that I don't remember which elements they talked about, but made me go, yeah, this movie, which has this premise of the whole movie, they're just sitting there doing this ritual that takes months. That's something I've never seen. That's interesting and weird. Let's find out.
Yeah. When you had it, you were ready to push play and we were on Netflix and looking at the little summary that Netflix does, I saw that it, it was like throughout the course of a lengthy ritual. Yeah. And that intrigued me because there are plenty of horror movies that include rituals and, cult stuff, but it's all like montaged. Like you don't see the rituals and the cult stuff, or it's something that's super quick, draw a little pentagram, put out a candle, splash some lamb's blood, boom, done.
Yeah, I was thinking like on Supernatural or something, they'll draw a symbol on the wall and they're done. Or Buffy, they'll draw stuff on the floor, put some candles out, and then like as soon as they're done doing that, they say a couple words, and then like some light flies up into the air, and you're like, ooh, magic. This was not that.
No. It was very different. So before we get into talking about it, first, so the first shot was of a broad shot, like wide angle lens showing, I don't know what you call it, like the moors. I don't know what it is in Wales. Basically, a long shot of a field heading off into the horizon with the sky above it. Sky was filled with these broad strokes of clouds, and everything was kind of yellowed out, and it was very bleak and dramatic looking. My note said presumably Ireland, because I knew this was an Irish film, but it was clearly something in Wales.
Yeah, except they did say it was filmed entirely in Ireland.
Okay, so it was Ireland pretending to be Wales. Yes. And I'm sure both the Irish and the Welsh would have something to say about whether those two landscapes are interchangeable.
Yeah, there's something going on there.
So the first line is a man saying,
"The furnishing's going to be removed if..."
And then getting cut off. He is a real estate agent. He is showing this woman, who we eventually find out is Sophia, this large castle-y house.
Yes.
That she's thinking about.
Country cottage. How about that?
A country cottage.
The size of a castle.
Yeah. There are times... My cousin Amber always posts pictures of, like, old, cool houses on Facebook, and there are so many times where there's, like, a whole castle that's for sale in some faraway land in Europe that sometimes I'm just like, oh, wouldn't that be nice?
No, castles are drafty and they don't have toilets. No castles.
I think we're thinking of the different kinds of castles, but
it's possible.
They are drafty, and I always talk myself out of it because I'm like, oh, so much upkeep. Like, yeah, the plumbing is terrible. The
right.
All the wiring would have to be redone, and
that's always what happens.
But still, so romantic.
And ghosts.
Right. But if we ever wanted to do some kind of year-long ritual, we would have the space for it.
Unless it was not exactly perfect. That's the issue.
She was very picky about that, asking about, which direction certain rooms faced, and I don't know what other criteria she was into, but clearly she had been looking for a long time.
A lot of specific rules.
So she checks out this castle and is like, I will take it, and like pays cash for it immediately. Like, it clearly was exactly what she was looking for. And at that point, we didn't know what she was looking for. Well, we did, because we had read the...
Well, we're not supposed to.
And then she meets up with Mr. Solomon. What were your initial thoughts of Mr. Solomon as he, like, scarfed down whatever eggs or whatever at this breakfast meeting?
I don't know that my opinion of him changed much during the movie. He was an unpleasant fellow. From the get-go, he's rude, definitely, but it's not just that. It's totally in charge, domineering.
Domineering is a good word.
Just, he's got to have everything his way. That's how it is.
Yeah, he clearly has the power in this relationship, and he knows it. Very much. And he wields it against her regularly.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like, gee, that's not very nice. But wait, he's a Satanist. I mean, I guess, I don't know if technically a Satanist, but he's doing black magic.
He practices the dark arts.
Should he be a good guy? I don't know. But I would have probably enjoyed the movie more if he was a good guy, because he was very grating.
Yeah, I want to talk about that more later on, but yeah, the way his character was portrayed was a strong sticking point for me and whether I liked this movie or not.
Off of that, I mean, I just want to point out, like, the whole arrangement they had. I mean, you don't find this out for a while. Everything's very spoken of in half speak. Like, you don't get good information and you have to piece it together, which is kind of realistic. I mean, they don't have to spell out what they're doing. They already know. They're meeting up for a purpose.
And I liked that. I felt like the writing was strong in this movie.
Yeah, it was. But here's the thing with their arrangement. She is paying him a ton of money to come do this ritual with her, which involves her being tortured. Like, she has to fast and be purified and do all these things that are just super unpleasant for her while he does nothing. She has to cook and clean for him. And then the final straw of the whole mess is, when the ritual succeeds, she gets to ask her guardian angel for something. And so does he.
Right.
So why does she have to pay him anything? This is insane.
Yeah.
He gets magic for free.
Well, that's the power that he has, is that he knows how to do this thing that she so desperately wants.
Yeah.
That she's willing to pay him money to do it and let him torture her, and he gets, like, he already gets something out of it.
I know.
And
it's crazy.
there were several points where I realized that he was doing it not because he was getting paid, but because he was getting something out of it. But at the same time, it also very strongly felt like he was doing it because he got to be trapped in this house with someone he could be abusive towards. And there was nothing she could do about it.
Yeah. At one point he said, I've been looking for you, someone of your situation, for a really long time. So he wanted to do this. So I'm so mad that she had to pay him a huge sum of money. And this is the most abusive part of the whole thing, she had to wheedle and cajole him into doing it. He was like, no, I can't do it. It's no good. Drive me back. Now drive me back again.
Yeah. A lot of what he said felt like gaslighting to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Like that he was saying something for the sole purpose of manipulating her into doing or saying something else, and into feeling guilty or feeling bad that she wanted something or was asking for something or was expecting something.
Yeah.
She had no idea how much power she actually had in that dynamic, because I don't want to call it a relationship. I mean, it is a relationship, but relationships sort of feels like it has like a romantic context to it, and there was none of that. No. But in this dynamic, I could see how much power she truly had. But she didn't know at all that she had any sort of power over him. Yeah. So yeah, it was so imbalanced. And truthfully, that was a big part of the story, I think. Like, that was part of what they were trying to do. And so I say that not as a critique necessarily, but just as this is what was going on, and that it was sort of what was causing me to have such an emotional reaction to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely part of it.
There was an element to that imbalance that did make me uncomfortable. Like, I was on board with it. I'm like, this is a terrible, terrible situation. Like, she should not be doing this. Like,
definitely.
I didn't like the situation, but I liked it as a story. Mm-hmm. Except for there were a few points, particularly the points where he got violently aggressive and was like throwing plates, and there were certain situations where it no longer felt like she was asking to be a part of it. It felt like she was withdrawing consent, and he was disregarding that.
Yeah, and of course then there's the black magic rule that once they're inside, there is no leaving until it's done. So he was like, I guess you can't unconsent, can you?
Okay, so within the context of that universe and the if we say that these dark magics are real and that's how they work, yes, fine. She did step into that knowing that. I mean, he told her that in advance. That was
one of the few things she knew.
Right. And I think the part that made me so uncomfortable about it was that he was using that to his advantage. Mm-hmm. Like, literally, he closes the circle of salt, which is like this is us locking the door. Yeah. We don't get to leave until we're done. And the immediate next scene is him being extremely abusive. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, buddy. Like, you don't even have the excuse of, we've been trapped in here for 4 months and, tensions are high. Like, literally, she can't leave now, so you're throwing plates and being a total word redacted. That part bothered me. I guess it's also situationally, for me, it was difficult to watch this movie on November 6th, 2018.
The very day.
Yeah. The very day that my government basically told me you don't get to withdraw consent.
Yeah, we've been engaged in a 2-year ritual to summon a demon, and
or has it been a 2-year ritual to banish a demon?
Well, that's what we're trying to do, but they summoned this demon and put him on a court.
Yeah.
And
it struck too close to home.
Yeah, there's a circle of salt around. We can't leave.
Yeah. So I guess that I struggled with that, and I wonder, had I watched this movie in 2016, I don't think I would have been quite as sensitive to what was going on. And really all that means is that I just wasn't as informed.
Woke.
I wasn't as woke as I am now about these kinds of issues. And
yeah, that's
so it kind
true.
of shows me how much I've grown over the last couple of years in terms of knowing what the world is like in reality.
Yeah, I know. I have learned more in the last 2 years than I'd learned 20 previous years. Like, this has been a real eye-opening time. And
and I've become so much more aware of, I know this is such a weighted word and it upsets people so much, but I've become so much more aware of my own privilege. Like, the fact that 2 years ago I could have watched this movie and been like, I would have given this movie a 5 with no hesitation 2 years ago, I think. Because it's a really well done movie.
Yeah.
And there are so many things I liked about it. And I would not have had this tiny little hesitation over the way consent was portrayed in this movie. Like, because it's not an overt portrayal. I was about to say it's not a movie about consent, but it is 100% a movie about consent. And the fact that 2 years ago I wouldn't have recognized that is because I have lived a life that didn't require me to be aware of that.
Yeah, and that's true for me of a lot of different kind of things, like suddenly realizing so many things about what it's like to be a minority of any kind, a minority of gender, which is funny because they're the majority, but anyway, and race and everything.
Sure.
Like, there's so much to learn about other people's shoes, and you know what? Social media has destroyed our world, but it's also opened all those doors. Like,
absolutely.
All I'm doing is hearing other people's life experiences, and some people see that and immediately push back and are like, whatever, that's not what life is like. And I'm like, no, this is them saying it. They know what their life is like, so take that internally and understand that that's what their life is like.
Right. I'm sure there are a lot of people in 2016 who watched this movie and immediately saw the issues with it. And those people, because I've been trying to listen to those people, to people who were already aware, that's why I can be aware of it now. There are a lot of people out there that we should be listening to. Like, there are so many people who are trying to share their perspectives and not being listened to.
Now, you said this movie is 100% about consent, and I don't agree.
That might have been a little bit of an exaggeration.
Because there's also a huge arc for Sophia that this movie is about, where I can't get to that without discussing this other thing, which is that the first most of this movie, 3/4 of it, is all lies. And that I loved it. I completely loved it. Like, she started out lying about what she was doing. He was lying about why he was doing his thing and whether he wanted to do it in the first place. And then she replaced that with another lie. Then she told the truth, but then she changed her mind. Like, everything kept changing, what it was about and why it was about. And it affected the ritual. Like, your intentions must be pure. Well, they weren't.
Right.
And it caused a huge problem.
So they went through, like, they cycled through the ritual a couple of times before her second lie came to light. And so things weren't working, and it was because of that.
And then, of course, in the end, it was there was the early on scene, one of my favorites, where she had to drink blood because she refused to forgive. Like,
right, that was the loophole or the get around.
Yeah, if you can't forgive, you can always drink blood. That's what I say. Like, I mean, come on, like, you can't just forgive. What's the big deal? And that was because that's what the whole movie was about. And
her line there, that was one of my favorite lines that I wrote down, is when she is told that that's the next step, is that she has to learn forgiveness. She just flat out says,
I don't do forgiveness.
They did something in that scene that I was waiting for more of in the movie, which could have been really interesting, where she got stuck in a time loop. She drank the blood, and then all of a sudden the blood was sitting in front of her, and he was going, come on, drink it. And she's like, but I already did. And she had to do it again. And it only happened that once. But I really wanted, like, time to fracture from that point on. It would have been great.
It would have been. It was already a complex movie. It would have made it that much more complex to do.
Yeah.
But I did really like that little time stutter. And I was also wishing it would happen more often.
Yeah, that was cool. And it was significant because that was the big sticking point, and I think that's why it stuttered, was that was the thing she was completely lying about, and her whole issue was forgiveness. All around, it ended up being, so that saved it.
Yeah.
I kind of liked how later she finally reveals, well, this is still a lie. Well, no, it's not a lie. She changes her mind later. She reveals she really just wanted vengeance, and he's like, what? Of course I was going to be happy to do vengeance. I'm totally into vengeance. It's like, obviously. Like, didn't you see this guy as soon as you met him? That would have been the first thing for me.
Yeah. I think she did not understand what she was getting into. Like, I don't think she had a good grasp of what the dark arts contain.
Well, and that was frustrating for me when, like, things kept coming up where he's like, okay, now you're going to have to do this. And she's like, really? I don't want to do that. Like, couldn't we have just started with a list of all the steps before we closed the circle of salt?
Right.
That was crazy.
Informed consent. It's all about informed consent.
Yes.
Yeah. So even when he finally realizes that the ritual is failing because she's lying, and it all comes out, and she finally says, yes, I want vengeance. It's not that I want to speak to my son, it's that I want vengeance. He figures out a way to renew the ritual, like to cleanse her. But he doesn't just say, hey, so turns out since you lied to me, the only way for this to be resolved is for me to basically kill you and bring you back to life. Yeah. Like, you have to die and be reborn in order for this to work. He doesn't say that. He wakes her up in the middle of the night and drowns her without her. She has no knowledge of what's going on. Mm-hmm. He lies to her about what's going on,
which is always good.
And he drowns her in the bathtub and then brings her back. Really?
Yeah, that was shocking. That was the second thing he did where it was really blatantly very bad thing to do to someone without consent, which he then revealed the lie behind in both cases.
And I think in both cases they were done because he gets off on that piece of, I have control, I can make you do things, I don't have to explain, and that's why he's in the business, I think.
Well, and what's weird about that is his request that he wanted granted, he revealed to her eventually when he was about to die, was that he wanted to, he said be invisible, but then he explained what he meant was live apart from the world, not deal with anybody anymore. Which is weird, because that did not seem, I mean, that goes against this whole idea. You'd think he'd want to keep being in control of people and stuff.
Right.
So I don't know, that doesn't quite fit for me.
It didn't fit for me either. So there was a moment toward the end, after we had learned about her vengeance, and, we finally knew the story of her son, because that was kind of like dripped out piecemeal throughout, which I liked. We finally know the story of her son. We finally know kind of what his motivation is. And I was thinking, as he was dying even, I was suddenly very sure that he had been a part of her son being kidnapped.
He mentioned it earlier. He's like, you didn't think I was part of this, did you?
And I was very sure that he was. And so I was like, when he died and she didn't know what to do to move on, like all the books had been blacked out. I feel like the demons did that. I don't think that was him.
Yeah, I think it was just magic. Or what I thought after a minute was that she just couldn't read them. They were still fine,
they were his...
but she couldn't.
Well, and if you think about, like, within the context of fantasy, like, wizards and mages have to study their, their spells, and they can use them once, and then they're gone, or whatever, and when they die... Like, so possibly when he died, his knowledge, like, everything that he knew went with him.
That could be, too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, when he died, and she didn't know what to do, and she's like, fine, I'm just gonna leave. And she opens the door, and she walks out. I'm like, I guess it's done. She got her vengeance. We're going to find out that meant...
I did not think of that.
Like, he died. Whether she knows it or not, she has received her vengeance. Like, her angel has given it to her.
Yeah.
And, simultaneously, he also received his invisibility.
Well,
he's no longer a part of this world.
That's a real monkey's paw situation. That's a good ending, Sully.
So I was like, ooh, that all ties up nicely, and I liked it. But then, it obviously wasn't done because she left and was looping back, and couldn't actually leave the house.
Yeah, and that got kind of weird. I thought they did really good, creepy, spooky stuff in this movie. There were very little in the way of jump scares, but I wrote my favorite scene was the shadow guy sitting in the chair smoking a cigarette.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there was nothing to it. He was just there, and she walked up and discovered he wasn't there because, as always, it's just a coat on the chair, except it was not a coat.
No, and the cigarette was still there, yeah.
And that was just super well done, even though it was just a guy covered with black cloth. It was not a big deal, but it was super well done. And then the demons were pretty cool. They were just dirty people kind of walking up out of the darkness, but like the whole, I don't know, it's sort of a Hellraiser thing where there's all these assorted weirdos who are just dragging you down to the basement, and it was weird. I don't know why they decided to chop her finger off, but that's what happened.
Well, so one of my notes at that point was that these demons were so human.
Yeah, they
were
just
like
people.
They looked like humans. That just had paint or like mud painted on them.
Yeah,
they were clearly very corporeal. Like they were grabbing her, carrying her around, like bumping into things. Like they were within the world. And yeah, like the cutting her finger off with the bolt cutters was like a mob move, not a demon move.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of, I don't know, like, you're in hell, this is how it is. Like, that's how Hellraiser movies kind of go, is it's all very physical, and they torture you, and you're there, it's real for you, but, if somebody else was around, there wouldn't be anything there, maybe.
Yeah. And it was real for her, because as she was leaving at the very end of the movie, she had her hand all bandaged up, and she was missing a finger, like...
And then, after the demons, comes the angel, which was an enormous glowing person.
It was Jason Mewes in a gladiator suit.
Yes, they hired Jason Mewes to wear a gladiator suit.
Yes, a large glowing Jason Mewes in a gladiator suit.
The thing with that is, like, it's so cheesy and so dumb to see, the giant glowing golden angel, but it worked for me. Like, I was not put off. I mean, I was put off a little, but I wasn't like thinking, oh, whatever, this is stupid. I was like, okay, this is a miraculous moment. Like, I don't even know why it worked, because that does not work for me. That's super cheesy. But there was something, part of it was the fact that this was holy. It was an angel after all of the demon things. And like, you kind of get this feeling that this magic isn't good or evil. It's just the world. Like, there's bad stuff to it and there's good stuff to it. You have to go through the bad stuff to get the good stuff. And it sounded cheesy from the beginning. They're like, you're gonna talk to your guardian angel. Like, really,
ask them a favor.
That's some kiddie stuff right there. But it all kind of works as like the world isn't as magical as you think. The magic in this movie was all very prosaic. It was just like her little goblin toy that was from her kid would be gone at some point, and she'd find it somewhere else, and like, for that to happen, some serious magic has to happen. Stuff has to translocate. That's a big deal, except it's not that interesting. It's just a thing that's not where you thought it was.
Right.
And it was all like that. And like, the bird hits the window and he's like, oh, that's it, the ritual's starting. I'm like, that's stupid. That's just a bird hitting the window.
Well, yeah, there was this... It was so interesting to me that almost all the way through, everything he said, I was like, okay, that could be true. The bird hitting the window, that's the ritual starting. Maybe that is absolutely true. And maybe a bird hit the window and he saw the opportunity to pretend that the ritual was starting.
I had that thought.
And we were well into the movie before I was convinced. Like, honestly, it was when she left the house and looped around and ended up back at the house, and he was dead and couldn't possibly have done it. I was like, oh, so there is magic happening. Because up until that point, every time the thing translocated, I was like, he maybe moved that. The flowers showed up on the hallway, and I was like, he went outside and got some flowers.
Well, but also, at one point they showed him tending a plant inside, and I was thinking, oh, is that part of his plant? He just grabbed that and threw it on the floor? Like,
yeah,
a little suspicious.
All of the things were things where I was like, he could be completely faking this, or he really knows what he's doing, and this is just... Like, I liked the subtlety of it, and I liked the question of whether anything was happening or whether he was just toying with her, because that's what she was feeling.
Yeah, but then there was the one where gold flakes started to rain down on her.
Yeah.
Which he could have faked. He could have had like a tarp up in the ceiling filled with gold flakes or something. I don't know. She was looking up, so it wouldn't be that, but something like that. And it bothered me that after that point, a ways after that, she was like, nothing's happening. What's going on? I'm like, well, you did see the magic gold sprinkling down on you, right?
Maybe she forgot. I kind of forgot about it.
I remembered.
Because I did. That was the first thing that I was like, I don't think he did that.
Yeah, I never thought he was doing the things. I liked that it was a possible question, but I don't know, it felt like this was magic, and what I loved about it was that the magic was so blah. Mm-hmm. Like, you had to work this hard, 6 months of work, to get your goblin to show up in a different room,
And the magic, while the results of it were so minor, like you said, the effort was so huge. I mean, it was the equivalent of her taking multiple college-level language courses
yes.
and some significant math courses, and like there were so many complex things that she was having to learn in order to do this, on top of she would have to sit in a circle for 2 days without eating or drinking or moving from that circle. Yeah. Or, like there was physical torture and mental exertion.
Yeah, it's definitely like really overwhelming. Like, she was doing much too well physically and emotionally for me for what she had been through. And like,
yeah,
you're surviving this much better than you should be.
Although,
she was really skinny.
She was. And like, okay, no food and water for 2 days, which is going to be hard on your body. Mm-hmm. But then he made a point of saying, then we will break for food and water, and then we'll start it again for the next day. Like, it was something that I believed that she would survive these things.
Yeah, but I was expecting her to break down more, to be like, like muscles atrophying and getting sick at some point. Sometime during this period, somebody's getting sick,
especially
right?
with all the scenes where she's getting like cold water poured on her, and after she drowns in the bathtub. You cannot tell me she didn't get pneumonia from that.
Yeah, I was surprised how healthy she was when she got resurrected.
On the other hand, he deteriorated very quickly from that knife wound.
And that was my note, is they didn't think to include antibiotics in their 8-month supply, did they?
Well, he had whiskey, and
yeah, whiskey's
apparently,
close enough.
Turns out whiskey, not an antibiotic.
No, but man, if he had just had some penicillin, he would have been fine.
I don't know about that though, because
it was pretty bad.
Like the knife was a through and through. I'm pretty sure from the position it hit a kidney or something. Like, bad things were happening inside him.
It was very bad.
And he's just like, just stitch it up. I'll be fine. Like,
well, I mean, he didn't have a choice, did he?
No, he did not.
You know what was funny? I don't remember when this happened, but at one point he fills a bucket of water. It was early on. And he finds her sleeping and he throws the water on her. And I couldn't help but expect him to ask her NASCAR trivia questions.
Where'd stock car racing come from? What? Hey, stop doing that! How'd stock car racing get its start?
But no, he didn't do that. That's exactly what that was. And then she's going to have to drive around with a cougar in the car. It was going to be good.
That was the very first morning after the salt was closed up. Yeah. Which, again, I was like, dude, you're coming on really strong.
Yeah,
like,
he was.
You could have just said, hey, get up.
No, this is boot camp, really.
Like, throwing water on her seems like she's failed this multiple times and she needs, you need to ramp it up. But
no. Just throwing some water on.
Yeah.
And asking NASCAR questions.
Well, so I feel like we could talk about this for a long, long time. There's a lot to talk about in this movie. And I feel like we are already far past when we should have started our rating.
I know.
So are we ready to rate?
We barely touched the stuff that I wanted to talk about. There's a million things. At least 1.2 million things to discuss. Like the ultimate Costco trip she takes. Anyway.
Ratings.
I guess we better rate because it's crazy time.
Yeah. So you get to rate first.
My rating for this movie is that this movie was very engrossing. 2 people in a house, nothing else. That's the whole movie. It was practically Bad Ben. It was just these 2 people in the house, and then at the end there were some others, like the demons. Mm-hmm. Crazy stuff, but so powerful. Great writing, great cinematography, great story, like, it was really amazing. I was really into it. And the where it steps down for me is that there wasn't really a point to it. Like, I found the story really interesting, and there's an arc about forgiveness, but I didn't feel a big, like, there's no big metaphor to it all. Maybe there is. Well, there is the whole consent thing to the whole event, but there wasn't like a lesson kind of thing hiding under the surface. I'm positive there was, but there wasn't one that I got.
Well, not about forgiveness.
No, I mean, that was her arc, but I mean, what is that? She was incapable of forgiving, and she got the gift of being able to forgive. Is it just that forgiveness is important?
I guess, but
I did have one thought about that at the end of the movie, like when she got her forgiveness and she's driving away and she's clearly feeling better. Mm-hmm. She's like, okay, this is over. I thought about the fact people mention occasionally the idea that forgiveness isn't for the person you're forgiving, it's for you and how you feel. I don't know if that's any part of the movie, but that's what it made me think of.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because she was unable to move on from the murder of her son.
Yeah.
Because she was holding on to this rage. And so when she was given the gift of forgiveness, now she's able to move on. She will be able to live the rest of her life.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you telling me I have to rate even higher?
I don't know. What is your rating?
Oh, well, I only kept you in suspense for about 10 minutes. So I rate this movie... You know what? Forget it. I rate this movie 5 broken plates out of 5 on our patented rating system. My first perfect score of the month.
First 5 of the month. Yeah.
And how do you rate this movie?
Well, I agree with all of the things that you said.
Great. We're done.
Yeah, it's the writing, the
acting. I forgot that one.
The acting, the movie making, the special effects I thought were good. Mm-hmm. I liked them. I'm like trying to scan through them in my mind at this moment to see if there were any that I was like, terrible. But no, I liked them. I noted the soundtrack a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
In a positive way. Usually I don't pay attention to it, so as long as if I don't notice it, I assume it was good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. On all of the ways that I could rate the making of the movie, was happy. I liked on a more, deeper, more emotional level. It made me feel emotions. They weren't necessarily positive emotions, but it's a horror movie. Like, you're not supposed to feel warm and fuzzy about it. And more importantly, I'm still thinking about this movie.
OMG! I was going to tell you that. I was going to waste 10 minutes of our time on that. How I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning for unrelated stomach reasons and laid awake thinking about all the horrible things in the world, and then transitioning to thinking more about this movie like I was last night after watching it.
Yeah. And
it sticks with you. Any
movie that after I'm done watching it, I'm still like turning over the pieces and trying to figure out like, okay, so what did that mean? Was that a part of it? How did it all tie together? How does it make me feel? How does it relate to things? That's always a good sign, because I'm really, I like to consume entertainment and then just immediately eject it from my brain. Like, I can read books multiple times because I read it and then I completely erase it from my data banks. And when I start reading it again, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I've read this before and I don't remember how it ends. So yay.
I do encounter that with some of these movies.
Yeah. So, and as we've been talking, I started this thinking I was going to have to give it a 4.5 because I really was bothered by the consent piece. The lack of consent.
Well, and that character, he was just so abusive.
Yes. And it really bothered me. Our discussion about it, I'm more convinced that was intentional and that was part of the point of the movie. Like, that it wasn't done for gratuitous reasons, like violent men make scary movies, so we'll throw a violent man in there. I think it was part of the point of the movie. So I am going to give it also a 5 broken plates out of 5. This is my second 5.
It is.
It is a completely different 5 than the 5 I gave to Bad Ben.
Yeah, Bad Ben. So you like movies with very few people trapped in a house.
Apparently. Yeah. But I'm basically giving it a 5 for essentially the same reason. I really, really enjoyed watching this movie.
Yeah, this was something else. I can't believe they made me not think that their giant angel was cheesy. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. It's amazing.
I think the piece that I really liked about it, it looked cheesy, but then when it was talking, like the mouth was moving and the voice was just nothing but like the house rumbling.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's such a cool idea. I mean, it's not a unique idea.
No,
I mean, that's sort of like the voice of God, concept anyway, but it worked.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell whether she could understand what he was saying or she was just going, okay, it seems like it's working.
Right. You seem here. I'll just ask anyway. Yeah. Oh, I'm a little shocked that we are 20 days in to the month, and this is the first movie we've watched that has made me feel like it was an emotionally worthwhile movie to watch. Last year, there were so many of those.
There were a lot of really good ones last
like
year.
Train to Busan,
Get Out,
the one with the unexploded bomb, Under the Shadow.
Oh yeah, Under the Shadow, the Iranian movie.
Yes, and I know there are others. Like there were so many that I was just handing out fives like popcorn last year because we found so many movies that were so meaningful.
We invented the 5+ last year.
We did. And so this is the first one this year that gave me that same feeling of, oh, people should watch this movie.
Yeah, this was really good.
We're super far over.
Vastly.
So, gotta go. Bye.
Bye. When I'm that's all, folks.